Is this now a remarkable group of people or what? Welcome to the final episode of the GuavaVet Find Remarkable vlog for this year. Today I'm joined by not one, not two, not three, but four remarkable colleagues, basically from the US to down here where I am in South Africa. So welcome, thank you. I know you are very busy people. Thank you for your time. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves. And Mary, I'm going to start with you, if you don't mind.
So I actually started my career not in veterinary medicine. I spent 10 years as a software architect, and so in a completely different industry. And I just think it's important to my story to explain that I had that unique experience before endeavoring into the vet space. And so it was actually the loss of my own dog that made me reconsider going back to school. And so I started vet school when I was 31, graduated at 35, went into general practice just for about a year or two when I realized it wasn't necessarily for me. I had a wonderful place, small little place, and great culture and all that good stuff, but just I wanted to make a different impact. So my vet school classmate and I, well, she had started doing in-home end-of-life care in her area in Florida. So she asked if I would be interested in that. And knowing that I lost my own dog, and that's the start of my path to becoming a vet, I understood how important that moment is. Plus, she said, we need software and a website and all that stuff. So I was like, oh, that's my jam. And we knew from the beginning that we wanted to grow it nationally across the United States. So we now have over 180 veterinarians servicing 32 states and 88 service locations, and have helped over 300,000 families, primarily with euthanasia in the home.
So your
is that good?
That's very good, but your story is, so I want to know more about, and now I'm going to ask each of you this, is, so the theme for today is from exam room to boardroom. So at some point, you sort of progressed from clinical to non-clinical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I was like boardroom, exam room, back to boardroom. Experiences would shape our life, right? And make us do crazy things, like quit a good job and go to vet school. But I was in clinics for about 2 years. And when I started to do Lap of Loves, that's the name of the company. I don't think I said that. So Lap of Love, I was doing clinical work in the home. So there's a lot of times veterinarians will say, oh, so you're not a vet anymore. You don't do vet work anymore. And for the first 8 years, I was visiting homes, creating, protocols, doing everything also as a vet. And now I'm strictly, in the boardroom.
Ben, you go next, if you don't mind.
So my name is Ben Jacklin. I am an equine vet by background, and qualified with the full intention of spending the rest of my life working in equine racing work. So I did that. Went down the internship and residency route, qualified as a specialist, and went back to where I'd done my internship, which is a very traditional partnership model practice in Newmarket. Went back there post-residency and thought, yeah, this is where I'm going to spend the rest of my career. And then probably about a year or so into that, started to wonder whether this might not be the way or the very best way that you could run a veterinary business. And I had a lot of friends in the legal profession who'd kind of been through the consolidation of small provincial law firms into what are now national law firms, and really espouse the benefits of what that does for the sort of aspiring young and then more seasoned professional, and sort of said, this is the veterinary profession sounds like the law profession was 30 years ago. This is where it's all going to go. So took a bit of a leap of faith and joined on the back of CVS, who's the company I have worked for since. CVS, which is a public company listed on the stock exchange in the UK. They sort of made a bit of an announcement that they wanted to get into equine work. And I think at the time they had maybe 2 or 3 equine practices, and at the time probably 300 or 400 small animal practices. So I thought, well, here's a good opportunity. I'll go and I'll run one equine practice for them, see where it takes me. Maybe I'll learn some other stuff, which I did. And then I got asked to run the equine division as it was growing. And again, it was probably only 3 or 4 practices at that point. So it was very grand to call it a division. But over the next sort of couple of years, we grew it to about 20, 25 practices. And I guess the focus in equine necessarily, those of you that do or have done equine work will recognize that the whole business is about who are the individuals you've got, because the client only ever interfaces with the practice through the lens of the person that turns up on their yard. So for me, the whole business needed to be about how are we going to be a company that people want to work for more than anybody else, because we can't give people a partnership. So yeah, we can give them some share options and that's great, but fundamentally the big downside is you can't buy a partnership. So how are we going to be a place to work that is better than anybody else? Because without people, we're just not going to have a business. So that was kind of the focus. And then it's fairly well publicized that sort of 3 or 4 years ago, CVS as a whole group was having a more difficult time. It was up to about 500 practices at that point. And I was asked by the then chief executive to run small animal, because what we needed to do in CVS was move away from the sort of financial target led, you know, make more money next month, please, approach. This vet's not performing, let's get another one. And I guess we were fortunate in hindsight that the sort of recruitment problems that were faced, well, globally, but in the UK for us, forced that change upon the business. So I was asked to run small animal, having never done a day's work in small animal in my life, but as somebody that believed passionately that a successful veterinary business relies on you creating an environment that people love to work in, and that the person, and not just vets, nurses, anyone that works in a practice, these are the critical people. How do we create a company that people want to be working in? So I did that for a couple of years, and we had a very fortunate. We had made some really good progress over those years. And then about a year ago, I joined the board and became a director of the company, and I'm now the chief operating officer, which essentially is the same role I was doing in small animal, I suppose, just more broadly responsible for the wider business in terms of sort of leadership and management. So hopefully that's
so it's not really from the exam room, then it's rather from the yard to the board.
From the stable, yeah, exactly.
Or from the stable, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Russell.
Hi, my name's Russell Welsh. I'm a small animal veterinarian. I qualified in South Africa, went over to the States, did an internship in Washington State. Sort of got to a point where I was going to follow academia. I was all geared up to going down the medicine specialist route, but decided I needed to just see what was going on in the world. Came over to the UK, started in just a rural practice doing mixed animal work. Then foot and mouth broke out, which was pretty horrendous. So started working for the ministry during sort of that crisis up there. And then went down to London, got sick of the cold I was up in Carlisle in the Lake District. So it was too wet and cold. So I moved from pretty much the farmyard down into, I did emergency critical care work down in London, and then met my old business partner, another South African who owned a group of practices called Village Vets. So high-end first opinion practices. We sort of built the business to around about 33 sites, London, North Hertfordshire, Cambridgeshire, and we opened up a referral centre as well, a boutique referral centre, London Vet Specialists. So what was happening, consolidation was happening. We were getting to a size where we were either going to get private equity and try and do it ourselves, or join a private equity backed company. So we got bought by Sovereign, who was a private equity company backing Linnaeus. And Linnaeus fitted our model because of what their strategic goal was in a slightly crowded market, was really going for the high end practices and referral led practices. So we're still backed by private equity. The business got built up to around about 150 individual business units, and then we got bought out by the Mars family. So been quite a journey. I enjoyed the buying, building, the integrating of businesses and practices. So my partner exited, and I took on the role of managing director of originally Village Vets, and then my role's grown where I'm managing director of First Opinion and London Vet Specialists. So it's been quite a journey. I suppose the good thing now is we've got a career or a future mapped out because we're part of a larger company. And I think the exciting thing with that is we're not necessarily pigeonholed to the business that we're in, we've got a wider lens, and and it could even be more national, international, global type of opportunities for people wanting to enter into this space. So it's been challenging, and I do miss clinical. I haven't squeezed an anal gland for a long time, but I do miss it.
You miss that.
But the thing is, I think you get to a point where you can't do everything well, and you need to focus on one or two things and try your best at doing well in those. So very happy where I am now, but see what happens in the future.
Down to closer where I am, here in South Africa, is Ryan. So Ryan, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Thanks. Yeah, my name is Ryan Norrie. South African born and bred, but did spend 9 years in the UK for my sins. It was a very good experience there, but there's no place like Cape Town. Yeah, I run I'm a managing partner for the Tygerberg Animal Hospital Veterinary Group. Compared to the people on the panel, we're a very small business, 11 practices, 6 vet shops. We have about 50 veterinarians in the group. Yeah, but my job is not dissimilar to what the others do, just probably on a much smaller scale. So I'm the CEO, MD, and my job is basically to make sure that we have a healthy, happy company today, but that we constantly looking at what the world's doing and moving with the time. So future-proofing the business. And I suppose, people would probably ask, what's your day job? Well, I think my day job, aside from sitting in a lot of meetings, is actually walking around the business, asking people, being the irritating person, constantly asking people, why are we doing it that way? Isn't there a different way to do this? And how could we solve a problem that makes it easier for a client or an employee in this business? So that's what I do every day. And I think, I never would have envisaged myself doing this, when I qualified just behind you and Russell. I don't come from a business family. I've not really ever been exposed to business conversations, and I do have to pinch myself frequently because I'm doing stuff that I never envisaged, and I love it.
Well, so that's yeah, and I'm going to continue on from that. Thank you, all of you. It's just you guys have all sort of reached you can go higher than this, but I'd say almost the pinnacle of your careers with regard to that you're in top management. And I'm going to ask each of you to maybe just say a few words about this whole concept of imposter syndrome. It seems, I don't know if it is an issue that we just notice more, if it's a zeitgeist thing, or maybe if you, for the benefit of our younger colleagues out there, just maybe give a few words on your journey. Is that something you had to deal with, imposter syndrome? Ben, let's start with you.
Yes, I would say continue to deal with as well. I think it's normal. I think if you're not asking yourself frequently enough, am I really the person that should be making this decision? You've probably got ahead of yourself. I think it's normal. I've certainly experienced it and continue to. I suppose the obvious antidote to it is a degree of confidence to make decisions, which you get over time. But I suppose what I've probably learned is the most important element alongside developing confidence I've been really lucky to develop a really great group of people around me who not only are great and I really trust them, but I also trust that they'll tell me what they really think, and they'll tell me when they think I'm definitely wrong and I'm talking rubbish. And I think alongside needing the confidence to sort of make decisions and big decisions that affect a lot of people, you also need those people who will stand up and say, actually, you're getting this wrong. And if you don't have that, then there's a danger that confidence can become itself a problem.
Ryan, now you actually did an MBA, if I'm not mistaken. So for a veterinarian going into a business degree, a postgraduate degree, did that help, being in a managed position now? Or was it that, you experienced imposter syndrome sitting, in having conversations with business people or from a business background doing the MBA?
That's a good question. People always ask me, do they think that MBA was worthwhile, and how much of it do I use in my day job? And it's a very difficult question to answer because I think I did an MBA later than what a lot of people do. So I already, I think, had developed a lot of life experience and different skill sets through the different jobs I did. I also did a lot of different stuff. And it's interesting that Ben and Russell also, either went down the specialist route or had done internship. I actually also wanted to become or had aspirations of doing a surgical residency in small animals, and also, spend time at Davies Vet Specialists in the UK doing an internship. And in the process of that, realized that actually it was really a business interest that I had rather than a clinical interest. I think the MBA was really good. I think the MBA was actually very good to diffuse potential imposter syndrome, because you realize that actually people running businesses are just normal. There was a whole lot of really normal people sitting in the classroom with me every day. And this little vet actually was able to hold his own pretty well. And I think that was great. Yeah. And you just, people are normal. And actually everyone at the end of a long week, enjoys a beer, enjoys a barbecue, whatever it is that you need to do. And I think that was really good. And I think the thing that I use the most in my job now is actually that I evolved a lot as a person. And there was a lot of personal development was a big focus of the Cape Town Business School MBA. And that's probably what I fall back on the most. And I suppose it helps, with that confidence to know that actually, when you're making business decisions, it isn't with a clinical background. It's actually there's a business framework and some business theory backing up what you think. And I've also been very lucky to have good mentors and a good team as well. So I think, having someone to sanity check you, and often that's my wife, I think that's very helpful.
Russell, now you've also done some management training. I mean, it's not as if, I want to ask you about the imposter syndrome, but it's not really as if we get the tools at vet school to end up where you guys are.
No, I mean, when you're running your own business, I suppose you learn by doing it and making those mistakes. So my old business partner was a lot more experienced in running a business than me, so I did learn a huge amount from him. But I think a lot of it is also engaging with a good team and not being afraid to take a decision or to make a decision, and also change path if that's not working. Rethink, relook at what's out there and move. But I've got to be honest, when we got backed by private equity, that was a big leap, because they looked at, I was then the COO of the company we sold, and it was down to me to go through all the diligence, to go through all the financials. So I spent quite a lot of time doing reading and learning the corporate bingo, really, to try and understand what a lot of people were saying. I think I've also, I've done quite a bit of getting people to give me feedback, just to try and find out where my strengths and weaknesses are. But I think as vets, we are strategic thinkers, we problem solvers. So I think you can apply that to many different situations. And we generally people pleasers, or we like to do a good job. So I've done a couple of courses just for my own development, and to meet people, like Ryan says, from outside of veterinary. And what you do realize is everyone's the same. You're talking to CEOs of aerospace companies and they're all very similar. They all got similar backgrounds, similar aspirations. And it's quite humbling just to see that there's a lot of people, I suppose, that are imposters in reality, working and doing their best. So, but I found some of the courses very useful just for understanding different perspectives of very similar problems.
Now, Mary, you started vet school at a more mature age.
Thank you. Yes.
Which I wish I did, because I think I would have been the better for it. So, did you feel like an imposter at vet school? Is that something you had to deal with, or did it come later, or not at all?
That's a great question. So I do think starting older, mature, was very helpful, because it did give me I had some business background beforehand. And as Russell was saying, when they asked me in vet school, how does being a software engineer, how's this going to help you be a vet? And I'm like, it's problem solving, whether it's a computer program or a cat, a yellow cat, you're problem solving, and you don't always have the answer. So I didn't have imposter syndrome in vet school. If anything, I was, kind of the older one, sixth oldest in my class. So I just wanted to go, drink beer in the woods with everybody also. So I had to invite myself. And then, in vet school, I was definitely not the top of my class. I gave our commencement address at our graduation, and everyone thought that because I was the valedictorian. And I was actually sixth from the bottom. So I was scholastically, very last, but I had other skills. I had other business skills and things that will be very important in my path later on. So I never had imposter syndrome in vet school, and also never outside of vet school. Now, have I ever had, I don't know what the hell I'm doing situation? Heck yes. But I do not believe I need to be perfect, nor do I believe I need to know everything. So therefore, I'll never, fake it till I make it. I will humbly always say, I have no idea, but I'm going to go find out. And that for me is just being humble is so much more important than being smart and knowing who you can go to. And if a lot of the viewers are going to be, veterinarians, it's knowing that you can go ask another vet in your clinic, or, search on a vet information network or something like that, because an owner will be so much more grateful for you to say, I'm not too sure, but I will find out. I will get the information than you faking it. So I don't ever pretend to be more than I am.
Look, so I don't know if you guys watched the episode that's just live now with Josh Weisman and Gudrun with regards to psychological safety, and it's exactly that. And well, first, before I go into my next question, because sort of you leading me into that one, Mary, I just want to say that I believe I'm the 10% that made the top 90% in my vet school possible, and I'm proud of that, I can say. So brings me to the next question. This is, you guys all run more than one practice, more than one location. And Mary, you now said, you need to you were comfortable to say, look, I don't know, I'm not sure what I've done. That is a cultural thing. So maybe Ryan, I'll start with you and work our way around the panel. How do you go about, you said you walk around the business, and so how do you go about, if you've got more than one location, to ensure that there is a good workplace culture in the group?
I was hoping you were going to ask me that later, because I think I want to know how they do it when there's 800 practices in the group, not when there's 11.
They're going to get their turn.
Look, it's a good question, and it's one that I kind of pretended I didn't have to answer for myself. Culture is a very amorphous, intangible thing, but it's super, super important. And I think as we started our expansion journey more geographically at a distance from where we historically were located in the northern suburbs of Cape Town, I realized that culture was a thing that I could no longer avoid. I basically, I think what we started with was I had to figure out for myself, what did I think made across our practices. I guess when you've got a slightly bigger group, you can benchmark things internally. And so I spent a lot of time in the business just trying to understand within our own group, which practices that I think were more successful and why, and what were the intangible things that made things more successful. And I pretty much kept a Word document open on my computer for 18 months, and I would just write stuff. And I would try and articulate what I was seeing or experiencing. I think that the secret is to actually realize that you have to make a culture explicit. You have to define it. And I produced the TAR aspiration document, the TH aspiration document, which is, I suppose it could be that glorified corporate wallpaper of vision, mission, values, and all those things. But I think that was the easy bit. And I think the challenge is making sure that leaders and managers buy into that and actually go and live it. And so, just this morning, I had a call with some of our senior people about how we were interacting with some smaller suppliers. We're consolidating our supply chain. And I think that the way we've been communicating with some of our small suppliers isn't the kind of language and the way that we want to be, because we want to become a brand that you can trust in the veterinary market. So that's a good example of having to hold people to account and helping people understand what these words in an aspiration document actually mean and how to live them. So that's what I think I've been focusing on, but it's a challenge, and I'm really looking forward to learning from the others.
Well, let's jump to Ben, and the same question to you is,
Yeah.
you're quite a big group. I'm sure there is a culture, and that you have aspirations for this, but how do you ensure that it's there?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's probably occupies 80% of my time, because I think we're kind of blessed, aren't we, in the veterinary profession, that you kind of get the culture of, we want to do the best thing for the patient and the client for free. That's kind of a given. You don't walk into a veterinary practice and go, wow, this isn't here. That's kind of given. And I think the mistake that large groups have made in the past is that, as feeling that, okay, well, kind of culture's done. We've got that. This comes. We don't need to worry about it. But I think certainly from my experience, it is hugely important that the culture that a big group tries to set is of very much a top priority. I mean, similar to, I agree with Ryan that getting something concrete agreed, and I felt very strongly we needed to agree that with the business, and spent a long time, and my wife always says I just sort of visit home at weekends, sort of a long time collating and listening and finding out what is it that really motivates people. And I guess the thing that I came to believe was that we needed to develop a very non-hierarchical culture within the company. We needed to put the people on the front line first. They're the most important people in the business, and get away from a head office and have a series of support functions. So I kind of made it my business to talk about empowerment everywhere I went, and that every decision we were making centrally was about how is this going to empower our practices. Because actually what I wanted to create, and I believe we have created to a large extent now, is business units that are owned and run by the people that work in them, so that they can I wanted a culture where people would just take decisions and accept that they might make a bad decision, but they've just taken 8 other ones that were good, rather than a culture where people are asking for permission all the time. And so we worked really hard on that. We changed the way we reported our data. We changed the KPIs that we were sharing. We worked really hard to get better quality KPIs. We invested a lot in local leadership training and also more mechanical management training, so that you had a series of really capable people in the practices who would run the businesses themselves. And I felt really strongly that that was the culture we wanted to pursue. And I'm totally with Ryan that you had to get to a point where you had something you could say, this is a kind of a stake in the ground, this is where we're going to get to, and these are the steps we're going to take, and kind of constantly share that with the whole business. But for me, if you look back at the history of CVS over the last 3 or 4 years, the single biggest change we've made that is attributable to our success now is that change in culture.
So it seems, from books written about happiness at work, especially in industries like where you need to use your brain, and you need to have a lot of people working together using their brains to get the best possible outcome for the client and the patient. And it's sort of, the MBA there would be, that makes people happy at work, is mastery, belonging, and autonomy. And it seems that you've sort of addressed all those points now in the culture that you want. Russell, Mary, I'm leaving you for last, because it's a very specific culture in the business that you have. So Russell, if you go next.
I agree with all the sort of the sentiment that people have been saying. I think it's very dangerous to try and define a culture, and very dangerous to try and force a culture on a business. So what we've done is, within Village Vet, we always had a pretty defined culture, and that takes work, it takes time, it takes effort. You have to recruit, you have to make sure that they align with your values. But again, it's not something you can force people to feel or force people to do. You have to live it, you have to breathe it, and you have to make sure that you stand by those values. That if you say that X is X, it's X, and I think it's really, really, really important with that. What we found challenging, which will probably be very similar to Ben, is when you're acquiring practices, each individual business unit has a defined culture. And that defined culture was often defined by the leaders in that business, or often the ex-owners of that business. Some of them were good cultures, some of them were not so good cultures. So the change and the challenge is trying to bring people on board and align them with your values and what you're trying to achieve. I think one of the lucky things within Linnaeus being Mars owned is Mars as a business globally has a really strong culture. So it's really clearly defined. It's really something that the business lives by and breathes, and that is easy to see. So you can start to see when you look at the culture in your own business, it's not hard to align it with the culture of the parent company, because there's nothing in there that is really in conflict or at odds with what you're doing. So it has been an easy transition in that way, but you know, it takes work, it takes effort. You have to.
Russell, you say that, so Mars is quite a big company, but there is still this difference in culture. And given the Mars group and the big corporation that they are in the US, there is still a difference if you look at VCA and Banfield. So it is different.
But what you can do is, that's where, you know, as long as you've got your pillars, you've got your values, you've got your ideals, you can align your culture with that. If you've got the same belief, the culture doesn't have to be the same. The culture is the soup you're swimming in, and that's going to be influenced by the makeup of your people. It's going to be influenced by the demographics, the region you're in, the country you're in. But I think as long as your values are defined and everything you do meets those values and works around those values, I think the culture forms itself. And it's been able to stop it when it's going in the wrong direction, and been able to, you know, to guide people and help people to believe in what you're doing. And like you say, within veterinary, I don't think anyone could say they don't want to do the right thing. You know, so we're quite lucky in that we have a grounding of wanting to do the right thing. We're empathetic people, we altruistic people. So it's getting the culture around how you get there, and the economics, and merging that with the business making profits, you know, and mixing all of those together that ends up defining your culture.
Well, Mary, Russell now mentioned altruism and empathy. Now, look, those are buzzwords for your business. And I must say, I think it takes a special type of person to be able to do the work, the very important work that you guys do. That must be a specific culture.
It is. This is end of life care. This is guiding people in their worst moments, in their worst days and hours. And it does take as much skill as it does to do a TPLO. It's just a different type of skill. You know, the way we communicate, the way I hand someone a box of tissues, you know, everything is, I don't want to say it's a show, because it's not fake. It's an experience that you have to be really into that and appreciate that. So when we were working, you know, culture is very much an ambiguous word. It's like, how do you know when you're in love, right? How do you define your culture? It's just sort of like, you know it. And when Danny and I were growing this, we knew we had some core values, but it was hard to put it on paper. But then as a leadership team, we got together and we said, okay, we need to define these things, right? Like Ryan was saying. And so we actually thought of 5 or 6 of our employees in all different areas. So our call center, which has 80 some people in it, our veterinarians, our IT team, like, who is it that we were like, this represents Lap of Love? This is, no matter what role that they fill. And we found those people and we said, okay, what is it about them that we just know it's them? And it's things like being humble. It's things like going above and beyond. It's, you know, mindful, professional, adaptable. Everyone thinks, oh, you have to be full of compassion to do this job. And yes, you do. But so many vets are compassionate, like we all are. But for Lap of Love, we have to be adaptable, because it is last minute. It's, you know, I'm underneath a pool table trying to get this dilapidated cat out, you know, like, so I think when we're looking for people and explaining what our culture is, it's all those, you know, unique personality traits. And like, for instance, humility. If somebody's like, I introduce myself as Dr. Mary. After that, I'm Mary. And if they're crying and they're, you know, upset and they, you know, give me a hug and call me Mary, I'm not going to correct them and say, well, it's Dr. Gardner, right? And so if we have some veterinarians, and rightfully so, they want always to be called Dr. Gardner, then maybe this isn't the best fit, because this time is not about you. This time is about them. And I want to be just as mindful as my sedation protocol as I am about the clay paw print I hand them. Like, it needs how clean my car is, how I look. And so Those are the things that we look for. And all of that encapsulates our culture. And as Ryan was saying, every vendor we work with, our number one vendor or partner is the crematories, because that's what we have to deal with a lot. And it is so important that they have these same values, that if something is wrong, if there's a name misspelled, they go above and beyond to go, add a blanket with the pet's face on it, like go above and beyond because they made a mistake, because this is something you can't take back. So culture comes, and as Ben was saying, it comes actually from, it is what we live and breathe, but our front line is most important. Our vets and our call center who are talking to those crying family, those are the people that are most important that have it. And so, so we flipped our org chart over years ago to be like, those are the top. Danny and I are way at the bottom.
So upside down pyramid.
Yeah, upside down pyramid.
So I'm going to ask you, all of you, or I don't know who wants to, define culture. How do you define it? Anyone?
I think
it's difficult.
It's the environment. It's the environment in which you work, the environment in which you operate. And like I've heard it said before, it's the soup. It's the water in which you're swimming. It's and it evolves around you, but it really governs and controls what you are doing, because there's so many factors that define culture.
Exactly, and that's the reason I was asking, because I sort of stole the definition from Seth Godin, who's a brilliant marketing guru, and he so simplistically stated it as people like us do things like this. So we've defined culture now, and the next question is, I'm sure many people would like to come and work for your organizations, and Russell, I'll start with you. What is it that you would look for in people to be able to come and join your group, your culture, your clan, your tribe is what they call it these days?
I think it's really important that there's a connection, that people, when they join the business or they want to join the business, that they have aspirations, that they want to be part of something bigger, and that they understand what our business values are. There's a lot of candidates. Well, actually, as you know, there's probably not that many candidates. So there's often, a vacuum of people trying to fill these jobs. So I think we're quite specific in what we look for. I interview a lot of people still, even though that's not my role, to fill even head vet roles or critical roles within the business, because I think it's just a connection. I think it's understanding what people want. It's looking at people that have aspirations, that want to develop, that have ideas. And again, it's hard to say, but that could join your culture or could actually add value and diversity and something new to your culture. So it's a hard question to answer, but I think it's more of a feeling when you're meeting people, or you're engaging with people. One person may be particular for one job and right for one job, but polar opposite for another job in the same business. So it's matching those skill sets, it's matching the personalities and the people to the role that you have.
Ryan, I'm gonna ask you to given what Russell just said, do you think that the CV and cover letter and interview is powerful enough to be able to identify people that would fit in to your culture? And what do you look for?
Obviously you can't go through a long CV, so you need to make an impression quite soon. I think that's fairly common knowledge. But I think that you have to meet somebody to really know whether they're going to work. You can't really tell how much energy somebody has from a piece of paper. And I think one of the things that we are most important for us is, does somebody have energy? Do they want to develop themselves? Do they want to be better? Because we're trying to make a company that gets better every day. you know, continuous improvement and constantly trying to be a bit better than we were yesterday is one of our driving philosophies. And so people need to be the same. If you, you know, this isn't the place to come for your, you know, to see out your twilight years. You know, we're going to push you, and hopefully, you know, by growing a business, we're going to create opportunities for the cream to rise to the top. I think that's one of the exciting things about being in a bigger group and growing, is that you actually find homes for great talent. And so if you want to be a person like that, then yeah, then you know, TAH is probably a good place. But I don't think we've completely nailed it. We, you know, on the management side of the business, where I think you've maybe got more time and possibly more candidates to choose from, we do use psychometric testing and other sort of more traditional HR screening things. But it doesn't feel like in South Africa, or certainly in Cape Town at the moment, that if you had to say to somebody, okay, can we arrange a psychometric test for you in a week, they probably already got 3 job offers. So we're not there yet. And I think what we have to be very disciplined about is that first 3 months, and having a very structured induction and review process. So that's where we're spending a lot of our time at the moment.
Ben, do you think that it takes a different type of person, or a specific type of person, to be part of a corporate and join the corporate culture, for that matter?
I think it probably depends on the corporate. I think they're really different. We often talk about corporates, don't we? Like it's one thing, one idea, and I don't think it is. I think there are some really
specifically, not in your business, definitely not one.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
But for me, I guess, what do I look for? I am completely passionate about our profession. I'm completely passionate about our company, and I believe we can make a massive difference in how the veterinary profession looks in the future. And I think that can be great for us as vets, nurses, people who work in practice. I am passionate. That's why I do this. That's what motivates me. So when I look, you know, if I'm interviewing somebody and thinking, are they going to join us? For me, it's, do they get as excited as I do? You know, you might be looking at me thinking, well, probably not as excited, but are they going to get excited about that journey? Because it's there, it's within grasp. We can do something really phenomenal in the next few years. If that person buys that and thinks, I want to be part of that, then they're the sort of person for me. I'm completely with the other guys on the whole CV. It's such an inadequate screening process. We've moved to actually recording 2 or 3 minute videos as our only screening process, because I think I can get more out of that I don't get anything like what I need, but as a screening process, to see somebody for 2 or 3 minutes, are they as passionate as I am? Because if they're not, it's probably not going to work.
Well, you know what? It's interesting you said video, because I've had many conversations with many people, and usually they say that we vets are just not ready for that, and which is interesting. And Mary, I'm going to continue by asking you the question. I believe that although it's not a show, but we do put on a show. It's an authentic show, but we do put on a show. And if people don't like the show, they leave and they're upset. So, you know, we perform veterinary medicine. And I thought of, you know, I've toyed with the idea, isn't it better to, rather than interview, audition? You know, because it's neither necessary nor sufficient to be good at writing CVs and good at interviewing to be a good vet. But your group of people, you know, that is your niche. How do you find people to, what do you look for?
Well, we look for when we're doing an interview, for those that say, this sounds weird, but I'm really good at euthanasia, right? Like, there's a few of us.
Yes.
And you guys know what that, right? There are those that are like, I don't want to have that conversation. And then there's those vets and nurses that are like, I want to set the room up. Like, I want to get, like, that's who we want. I don't want somebody who's like, I'm burnt out in practice, so this sounds like a great quality of life for me. Or this is, you know, as Ryan was saying, the golden year job. Like, no, man, we're lifting big dogs. We're going, you know, we're busy. We're, you know, we're like, I love ambulatory vets. So vets that have done either ER work or mobile or equine, like that, they're great because we are on the road. We're very different than being in a clinic room. We were just talking about this yesterday. When we hire a new vet, we have them shadow other vets, and I'm like, I really want, after 2 or 3 months of them being on their own, for some, you know, for another veterinarian to go back and shadow them to see how they're now doing it, because we are very much alone. We're on the road. We don't you know, nobody else sees what you're doing, you know, so it's good just to get the refresher. But if I may geek out a little bit, some little things that really annoy me, let's say, about people who are applying or whatever is like, they don't get back to emails quickly. They, you know, small things like that, or their email is totally canned and just not complete. Because I think how you do one thing is how you will do everything. And if you don't respond to me for a job interview, for like booking an appointment to talk to me, that's how you will act with the client. And when the client wants to know where their ashes are, you need to get back to them same day. And if you're looking for a job, like, so you'd be surprised how many people that I'm like, nope, I'm not going to interview them. It took them a week to get back to me. Yeah. And, or say thank you for, you know, giving them advice for something. Like, it's those little things that go a long way. So, so for those listening, email me back.
Well, no, look, that I was actually going to say, you know, we've got 2 or 3 minutes left. I'm going to ask each one of you. I'm going to leave you for last, Mary, because you actually gave a lot of advice now. But that is, you know, look, this has been a challenging year. We are part of a challenging profession. You know, we face additional challenges currently. Here in South Africa, you know, the new graduates that just finished their community service will start doing their real jobs where they get paid less. But maybe let's just, you know, in the few minutes remaining, and Ben, I'll start with you, just, you know, parting words for our younger colleagues watching this. Some advice. Sage advice.
Well, whether it's sage or not, I'll leave you to determine that. I'll give you some advice. My advice would be, and look, this is coming as someone who trained as a specialist and has probably spent the last 6 years listening to people say, oh, you know, what a waste. I can't believe you've left all that behind. My advice would be, do something that makes you really passionate and motivates you. Don't do something because you think probably you ought to. A lot of people, the specialist route's a good example. A lot of people go down that route because, well, I probably ought to become a specialist because that's the next bar I can achieve. And actually, it's not right for everybody. It wasn't right for me. I wanted to do this. I didn't throw it away. I'm very glad I did it, and it was great. But choose your career moves based on what really excites you, not what you think you ought to do.
Russell?
Yeah, I would agree with that. You know, and I think sometimes the term "not a real vet" gets thrown around, you know, a lot. But when you're looking at the veterinary industry, you're all spokes and cogs in that wheel. You know, without the corporate governance or without people in leadership roles, it would become very difficult for people to practice at a clinical level. Without people working in the pharmaceutical company, the drugs wouldn't get developed and tested. So I think it's really, really important that the profession there's so many avenues that young vets can follow, and one isn't better than the other. They all intertwined and interlinked to make it a better profession for everybody. And do what makes you happy. You know, just because you've spent a substantial amount of your life at university doesn't mean, you know, you have to be pigeonholed into that clinical role. It's a big world out there, and I think there's more opportunity now than there's ever been. So I think it's an exciting time in veterinary industry now.
Ryan, do you think we have as many opportunities here in the southern tip of Africa?
I think people who, like Ben was saying, I think if you energized and up for it, you'll always find opportunities. I think the world has a natural way of sucking in people who want to do cool things. I mean, you're doing a whole bunch of totally weird stuff, in my view. But it's, you know, and also, you know, we you know, I was 23 when I qualified. What do you know when you're 23? I think the crucial.
Well, I was 27 when I qualified, and I still didn't know anything. So.
You know, I think if you're following your energy and you just, you know, there's a structured going with the flow. You know, there has to be a bit of logic and a bit of planning, but don't be too shackled by the tram lines. I think, you know, happily balance between the tram lines, and you'll end up going in interesting directions. And I think very, very important for new graduates is don't fixate on clinical skill development. I think there's so many other skills that make you good. You know, just how to deal with a terrible boss, how to deal with a difficult colleague, a tricky client, how to finish the week having had 1 or 2 real patient care, you know, oopsies. and still be able to go to work on Monday with a smile. Those are skills that are far more important in my view than learning how to do a spay in 20 minutes or whatever the next clinical thing is. So there's learning opportunities everywhere. You just have to be up for it.
You know, some people refer to that as soft skills, and I think those are very hard skills to learn. Mary,
Yeah.
we've got a few minutes, well, a few seconds remaining. So,
well, everybody said such great things. I would say that, you know, the opportunity is so good for graduating vets. In 2008, it was flipped opposite for me.
mm-hmm.
So this is the time I say, do a little dating, right? Because you don't want to just get married to the first place. Go on a date with the clinic and go spend a week and really make sure that, who cares if they have dental x-ray machines? You want to make sure that you're going to laugh and have fun with these people and they're going to support you. And the only way to do that is to spend time. And the last thing I'd say too is this world is very small. Look who I'm on this screen with from all over the world. And I have been to Cape Town. So it is a small profession. So be kind, be humble, and be considerate, because you never know what this, you know, wonderful profession may lead to and who you may bump into in the future.
Well, look, guys, this was excellent. I am so thankful, and I'm sure everybody who will be watching this will be thankful too. You've given a lot of advice and, you know, things to look forward to and positivity. I think we'll end it there. I will, in the show notes, put links to your websites and your LinkedIn profiles. So I just want to end with this last thing is, yes, I do weird and wonderful things, but with regards to imposter syndrome, I was sitting in a room with a lot of child and adolescent psychiatrists, and they just said I'm not a real doctor because real doctors don't have shotguns as part of their treatment regime. On that note, I'm going to say goodbye.
Thanks very much.
Bye, thank you.
Good night.
Cheers, guys.